Welcome to Final Approach with Chris Gregory. I am a philomath who is somebody who loves to learn things. One of the things that I've learned is that everyone has a tale to tell and a lesson to teach. From pilots to farriers to musicians to authors and creators, I'm going to explore my interests while introducing you to some amazing people. Pre-flight is complete and we have clearance, so let's kick the tires and start the fires. I have known Canadian farrier Marshall Iles for almost 30 years. We got to see each other every year in Calgary as he kept the competitors in line and the contest moving forward. He is a wealth of information and history about this great part of farrier lore, and we had a great conversation that you get to listen in on. Enjoy this. We are cleared for takeoff.
I can't hear well. My wife says I have the hearing of a Jack Rascal terrorist.
You know, my wife started a conversation the other day screaming at me like, "You never listen to nothing I say," is how she started it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I always go here. She cusses my ass and says, you're not listening to me. And I said, pardon?
Yeah. All right. So, guys, I got to start this. This is Marshall Iles. He is the face of the Calgary World Championship Blacksmiths for many, many years. I know his name sounds more like a location than an actual person name.
It's in the South Pacific, by the way, the Marshall Iles.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, they're mine.
Is that where you're from?
No, but they are mine.
You don't look very South Pacific.
I don't tan well.
So that's why you're in Canada. I do want to say that the cussing, I've asked him to keep it down. I don't know how well he'll do. And also the opinions represented. How am I supposed to say that?
You say the opinions expressed in this interview are not necessarily those of the management.
There you go. And that came from Marshall himself. So I knew this was going to be a really great interview. You can't have a conversation with Marshall without laughing and smiling and shaking your head, because he's got lots of good points and he uses big words, especially for a horseshoer. And so
they're not mutually exclusive. You know, I've known farriers, horseshoers, blacksmiths that can do more than drag their knuckles on the ground, Chris. I know.
So, Marshall, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I've been waiting. I thought a lot of people had tuned me out and stopped listening to me quite a long time ago. But,
no.
This is not. This should be fun.
Yep. I've met Marshall for the first time in 1996. I came to Calgary for my first contest, and you were very gracious, and you helped point me out where the restrooms were and where my anvil was, and you and Eric Swanby made it a great time for me, and we've had a good relationship all these years. I know that's not with everybody, but you and I seem to have gotten along pretty good. So how long have you been shoeing, sir?
This is 40 years.
40 years, this year.
Yeah.
And how did you learn?
Just by bad luck. I was my mother was horse crazy and 10 years old, and she pulled me aside and said, I've bought your younger sister a pony, but you're going to have to ride it until she gets old enough. And I was like, what's the deal, Mom? You don't like me? What's going on? And it was like, typical pony story. It was rotten to the core. Take you, run you through the trees and brush you off. You'd get back on, it'd buck you off. You'd get back on, it'd take you in the middle of a swamp and dump you. And it was.
You had to like that.
No, I did not.
You did not?
I'm a masochist by nature, but I didn't like any of that. I don't even like horses, not even to this day. I treat them all the same, with the same disdain and dislike. We couldn't afford the first one. That didn't seem to matter to my mom, so we had a couple of dozen of them. And of course, you know what rape and pillage artists horseshoers are, and so I was a snotty-nosed kid tugging on the shirt tails of everybody that used to come out to the farm and do the work. So finally, they got sick and tired of listening to me, and they threw me a rasp and an old knife and said, "Here, do it yourself, kid." It was actually had to be Murray Smith, the tall Australian fellow that you've probably met somewhere. He used to hang out at the contest quite a bit, and Murray was one of the fellows that encouraged me to go to horseshoeing school.
Did he ever work with Art Goulet?
Yeah, Art Goulet was my instructor at Olds College.
No, did Murray?
Murray never did. Murray had a long checkered career. He used to be the Crown Prince of Australia. Then he was a minor sub-career as a bush pilot and became a horseshoer. He was one of the first ones that had come back to Calgary with having met Bob Marshall out at the coast and Tommy Allison. I think it was in the beginning days of the late 70s, and Murray was sort of the person that imported some of the advanced knowledge that set the Calgary horseshoeing industry on its ear, because the fellow who started the World Championships was a guy named Don Wenham. Don Wenham was one of the farriers besides Murray that would come out to our place. Don Wenham was, I used to deliver his paper when I was 10 years old kind of thing. And then I was a pony club kid, and Don's in-laws, Millie and Bill Pratt, at the time had a ranch west of Calgary, and Bill Pratt at that time was the general manager of the Calgary Stampede. So when Murray brought back this intel about this Bob Marshall guy and Tommy Allison and horseshoeing competitions, and the AFA was just starting to get geared up, and they went on a road trip and they saw an AFA convention, a horseshoeing contest, and heard the stories, it sort of lit a fire under Murray and Don, and it was probably me tugging on Murray's shirt tail and asking him stupid questions at a pony club meeting, because I was a pony club kid back in the day, and said, go to school and learn. And then helping Don out. And it was actually Don he started shoeing horses, late 70s kind of thing. He wanted more. Don was a super smart guy. He wanted to learn more. He wanted to be able to introduce higher learning to the local horseshoeing marketplace. Don was the father of it. Him and the entire Pratt family, the extended Pratt family.
They were here in Calgary.
They were here in Calgary.
You were the kid running after them, 12-year-old, 15-year-old? What were you?
Well, like I said, I knew Don from the time I was 10 years old.
And so when did you start dealing on shoes with them?
Well, I started trimming our own horses' feet when I was 14, 15, that kind of thing. Did not go to horseshoeing school till I was 19, but it was helping Don out at the very first. Well, it wasn't helping him out as much as hanging on the fence, looking for a place to happen kind of thing at the very first ones. Before that, Don had started a little contest in Alberta. It was an entire genesis of his adventure in the horseshoeing contest.
Is he the guy that started the first world champion?
Don Wenham. Yeah.
Don Wenham. Okay.
What he wanted to do more than anything else was encourage guys to learn more. So he had after the first AFA convention he attended, it was like there was an opportunity to have clinicians.
So what year was that first contest?
First contest up in Edmonton, not the World Championships. The first contest it was a contest that was promoted by Don. It was like 7 guys in a parking lot in Edmonton. You drop the tailgates of the truck.
But that was not the World Championship.
It was not the World Championships, but it was a progenitor, and it was the thing that sort of was the catalyst that started it, because Don wanted to invite the Charlie Browns of the world. He wanted to invite Gordon Haidt. He wanted to invite all these guys that he had just met to come up to Calgary and teach the other guys. And so there was a small nucleus of horseshoers that were all at the same sort of base level, that were wanting to learn and evolve at the same time.
So how did it get to the Stampede?
This is the sort of the progression of it. So you have Don Wenham and Ron Tucker and Murray Smith and Hans Collowin and half dozen local horseshoers that all were progressing at the same time. Don was sort of like the stud duck of the day, and they would come to Don's place, or they would meet somewhere and you drop the tailgates and everybody would learn how to pull a clip, or they would learn how to punch a cork hole or use a fire even. 40, 50 years ago, there was nobody that would use a fire locally. But the fellow who was a mentor of Don Wenham's up in Edmonton, his name is Carl Goldgrabe, and he was an old German fellow. And he was the only one that really was working on jumping horses at that time. As a matter of fact, there's a picture here at Spruce Meadows in Charlie's shoeing shop of Carl Goldgrabe.
Is he the painting on the wall?
No, it's not a painting. That's Lance Sloan. Carl, there's an old Kodak photograph blown up of Carl Goldgrabe in a parking lot here at Spruce Meadows when the place was first being built, shoeing jumping horses. And of course, then nobody knew how to pull a clip or punch a cork hole.
And you couldn't buy it back then for sure.
Correct. And so Don learned from Carl. Carl actually learned from another older German fellow named Martin Schultz, who he met in church up in Edmonton. And Carl he was getting overfaced, needed to learn some more forging skills. And Martin was an old world blacksmith. And so Carl went out to Martin's place, and Martin showed him how to start a fire and
nice,
heat a shoe and all of that. So it went from Martin to Carl to Don to me, and then it sort of progressed from there.
So were you at the very first World Championship in Calgary?
Hanging on the fence watching them. And at that time...
So what year?
It was 1980.
80. Okay. And you officially started shooting in 83, if I get 40 years?
I went to Olds College in 83.
Okay.
Class of 83. I'd been dicking around with our own horses up in...
Had you made any money before 83? Shooting horses?
I wouldn't call it money.
Okay.
When you make money trimming and shoeing your own horses, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Okay. You've been to every one of these then?
I knew that this was beyond cool.
Yeah, of course.
So I wanted to go to horseshoeing school. Didn't have any money. And back then, it was fairly competitive to get into horseshoeing school at the time.
At Olds? At
Olds College. I mean, they used to advertise in the Western Horseman. It took me 2 years to actually get into the...
No kidding. Wow.
And now they have a tough time filling any of the 16 holes for it. And
yeah.
The progression of the Farrier education system up here in Canada is I would say it's underwhelming right now. I would say that I was probably had the best education that I could have gotten because it was on the cusp of a minor renaissance. And Art DeLay, who was one of my instructors, was also a personal hero and somebody that
incredible man. Yeah.
Beyond look up to, set the tone in the way. And he pushed and promoted quite a lot of the competing and for advanced education. And
yep.
All I knew when I came out of school, out of the 4 months of advanced farrier education at the time, which I got not much out of, because 2 weeks into the class, I slit my wrist open on a broken knife, just about cut my left hand off.
Oh my!
About 53 stitches.
So the knife broke coming out of the foot?
I thought it was all that in a bag of chips when I first go on, because I actually knew how to trim feet and nail shoe on. I thought it was somebody, and I was busy. Hard, dry foot, and I used to sharpen my knives, till they were razors, and coming down, holding the foot, and bearing down about to turn the corner, and then snap, and just it ripped. And the first thing I did was pick my hand up and wiggle my fingers, make sure the fingers still worked.
Wow. Well, let me do a public service announcement here. So we do make and sell hoof knives. And if they get more than half the thickness of the blade, it's time to turn it in. Because when you're putting pressure on it, if it breaks, what's coming at you is dangerous.
Yeah.
So did you lose use of any fingers, or?
Yeah, for most of the rest of my course.
But you got them now, right? Wow.
I'm glad it was my left hand, not my right hand. But
oh, man.
That was an eye-opener. And, of course, Art had told me, you should probably just, take a knee and maybe come back another year. And it was like, this is my only shot, bud. And so...
Learn what you could, huh?
When I graduated, Don Wenham had called me up, and it was because I knew Don. It wasn't even Don, it was his wife. And his wife wanted somebody to come and hold horses for him because, Don was probably the coolest, most uptight person I'd ever met.
That could describe some people.
He had some issues, and I worked for Don for 5 years.
Okay. Now, what did it pay in 1983 to be a helper?
I got $10 a day.
Well, that's not bad.
In 1984, that was still didn't buy gas to get to work and back, and I did that for 3 years. And the last 2 years, I worked for nothing.
Oh my!
But I had been conscripted into the tribe, and I was voluntold to do lots of things, and so that was sort of my introduction to all of it, because I was, not family, but part of the extended family.
So you're talking about how much you detest horses and all of this, but how did you get to where you are detesting horses? I mean, surely that's just noise.
No, I pretend every nail I drive is going straight into their puny hearts. I mean, it's just, it's revenge. Like I had 5 paper routes when I was 10 years old to support these things, these hay burners. I never ever once liked them. They've been nothing but a bane to my existence. And it's just a source of income.
So what would you have been if not a horseshoer?
Oh, probably a semi-professional chess player or a philosopher king of some sort. Anyways, I went to horseshoeing school. And
all right. The World Championship started in a parking lot, if I understand.
Yep. Behind the Ag Building, in between that and the place where they're going to build the Saddle Dome. The Saddle Dome is kind of an iconic arena on Stampede Park. And so it was basically out behind the barn kind of thing on Stampede Park in a parking lot. And there was 11 guys the first year.
Bob Marshall won.
Bob Marshall won 5 years in a row. He was our first world champion. And the reason why they called it the World Championships was because there were 2 different countries involved. You could call it 3, as Bob identified as an Englishman living in Canada at the time. But the whole thing was, when Don wanted to put on a contest after they had their first little one up in Edmonton, he went to his father-in-law, Bill Pratt, who was the general manager of the Stampede, and said, I'd like to do this.
Nice.
And Bill said, no, you're just a dumb horseshoe. I don't, forget about it. This is, he had zero appreciation for it, but he said, go talk to the guy who was the ag manager at that time, a guy named Dennis Serrata. So Dennis Serrata sat Don down and said, listen, Stampede is the best of the best. It's the greatest outdoor show in the world. And if you're going to do this, it has to be World Championship. It has to be the best of the best. That was their mandate going into it right from the very beginning.
Okay. And was that for the very first one in the parking lot?
The very first one in the parking lot.
Oh, wow.
That was the mandate. So very humble beginnings.
When did it go from the parking lot into the big top or to the next building?
They were in the parking lot for probably 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Until the big top was built. And the big top was only ever supposed to be a temporary structure.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that lasted for 30 years.
Yeah.
When you think of the World Championships and when most people think of it, it's that tent.
Oh, yeah, that big top.
That idea of walking into that big top. And
yeah, it was an amazing place.
Yeah, it had a vibe.
Yep.
Definitely had a vibe. And because it was agriculture. I mean, that's where they had the horse pulls and the tractor pulls and the reining contests and all of that.
When did you actually become the man in charge?
Well, I don't think I ever was the man in charge. I think I was, like I said, it was voluntold. The first thing I was doing was shoveling coal out of a bin and dragging buckets back and forth and helping set up. I was Don's minion.
So you're a floor crew?
No, I was Don's minion, period, because the rest of the family, the Pratt family, which it consisted of Don's wife, Robin, and her sisters, Marilyn and Hillary and Judy, and all of the extended Pratt clan, and all friends and family. I was actually a volunteer for several years before they actually even allowed me to become a Stampede volunteer, which involves, the good thing you're sitting down, you get a parking pass.
Hey,
so you can drive down and work for free. And then,
one thing that Calgary always represented was a lot of walking.
There's a lot of walking.
A parking pass would have been all right.
Yeah, but it only got you so close, and then you still had to walk And so, yeah, I have a fairly extensive historical and jaundiced view of what Stampede means to me. I'm a native Calgarian, one of the 63 native Calgarians, and if it hadn't been for the blacksmith competition, I would not have darkened the door of the Stampede. I mean, it's just it's a major league pain in my ass for a large part of my life. So no thanks.
It changed a lot. I went there, I think 19 times, and from 1996 to 2017 was my last time. It had changed a bunch.
Yeah, it's evolved. I mean, the Stampede lost its way and its will a long time ago. I mean, it was they give lip service to Western heritage and agricultural values and all that kind of stuff. That's what it started.
It's really theme park now.
They see value in drunk tourists, selling beer to tourists, and parking revenue. One of the reasons why they shit-canned the program back in the day was they said that we weren't identifying with our urban audience enough. And so when you say, well, who is this urban audience? They couldn't identify it. The Stampede will be hard-pressed to, as they evolve, they'll be hard-pressed to be able to keep their chuck wagon racing.
Right.
Even the last blacksmith competition we had on Stampede Park, they had an animal safety officer that was bird dogging us the entire time. They had a woman that was a barefoot trimmer that was the Stampede's animal care and safety officer.
Oh, my.
And she didn't believe in putting shoes on horses' feet.
Was she throwing red flags all the time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, so just another one of the many reasons why we're not on Stampede Park anymore. So when you have people with assumed power sort of dictating what the future looks like without any basis in reality, it was trying to die a slow death for a long time. And that was one of the reasons why my initial conversations with Craig in regards to him having his breakout group and becoming, what is now today the World Championship Blacksmiths, competition through education through competition, tent revival, which primarily is what Craig is doing. Craig is doing the Lord's work by traveling the country and promoting.
He's an evangelist.
Yeah, he is an evangelist. I tell him that all the time. He's an absolute evangelist, and he's doing us all a favor by keeping
the trade alive.
The trade alive.
Yep.
Whether or not being able to use a coal fire in the future is even an option.
Yep.
Remains to be seen. which is another reason why we're not on Stampede Park anymore. We knew that the big top tent was going to come down eventually, and you got to see it come down.
That was sad.
It was beyond a sad day, and I was down there the day that they were actually physically tearing it down.
Oh my!
And I saw your flag
Right.
on the pole outside, and I said, I know who's going to want that.
The story here is I was competing, and Margie Lee, her husband, was often the announcer, Don Gustafson. Margie Lee Gustafson come in and said, "Hey, I saw your picture on a banner," and I'm like, "Oh well, whatever." I thought it was a flyer or something, but it was massive. That thing is like 30 feet long, and I was all over the Stampede, a picture of me forging. And then one showed up in the mail, thanks to Marshall.
Yeah, it was a piece of history that needed to go to a home where it would be appreciated. It was just going to get torn down and thrown in a dumpster somewhere, and it kind of felt like that's what was happening at all that 35 years of work, and it wasn't just me; it was everybody
Involved. Yeah.
It wasn't my contest; it was the world's contest, and it wasn't just Don who had the vision for it. It was that mandate from the beginning, saying it had to be the world best. And I tell you what, we ate a lot of shit at the beginning because there was, the Edward Martins of the world, like a lot of Americans, the Bruce Daniels was there at the beginning, and like, who do you guys think you are calling this a world championship? Blah blah blah, and it probably wasn't a world championship to start, but it's the creation of something. The reason why we have world champions today is that somebody created a world championship to create them.
And in reality, if you're out there shoeing horses in Iceland and you want to be here for the World Championship, this is where the World Championship happens. So
it's a destination, and I think was a lot of the draw for the contest initially, was because, Stampede is kind of a destination. It's kind of a bucket list thing, and it was a rock and roll party for a lot of these guys at the beginning. It took a while for it to grab some traction and some credibility. And once it did, once you started seeing the Bob Marshall invited his dad, Pops Marshall was there. I think it was 83, one of the first years that we're in the tent.
Did Pops compete?
He struck for Bob.
Which is what I'm doing for Cody now.
Correct. So this is the cool thing about the trade is the intergenerational stuff and the continuity and the being able to keep the trade alive, keep the traditions alive. When I started working for Don, when I came out of school, there was just about no one that had anybody working for them. There was no apprentices. There was no gifting, no sharing of knowledge, no carrying it on forward. Guys wouldn't even talk to each other. Somebody would pull up at the barn, there'd be another fellow working, they'd pack your stuff up and you'd leave.
Yep. The World Championship was such a special place before the internet, because if you could get access to this place, you could learn stuff that nobody else was seeing.
For a fact. I feel like I've been one of the luckiest people on the planet because I have had a front row seat to the very best in the world in my chosen profession.
Every year for
a long time. And I'm one of those people that steals with my eyes and my ears. I might look like a troglodyte, walking down the street. I probably give that impression when I'm speaking to you, but I notice things. I'm blind, but I can see.
So now when he says first row seat, there was a draft contest. And for some reason, I always got this flea-bitten gray draft with no foot and a lot of attitude. So I don't know how many times you twitched that thing while we tried to get around it. We had to sneak around that thing like gypsies. That was a fun one.
It was ugly and it was bad and it was all wrong, all 17 kinds of wrong, and it probably felt like it was intentional, but
it felt a little personal, Marshall.
It was starting to feel personal. Yeah, here you were, Captain America, kind of feeling a little personal here, guys. Just bad luck.
Now, do you read a lot? You strike me as a reader.
I love to read. I grew up reading. The library was my refuge. I was the quintessential nerdy kid when I was little. Not much different today.
What's your reading list? Give us some books that you like.
It's going to be long and varied. I mean, I've got a virtual library in my bedroom. So, I wake up looking at books. I go to sleep next to my book.
Do you read novels or do you read technical manuals or
everything? 6 of the 300 that are on my bedside right now. You're going to find Bertrand Russell. You're going to find
what's Bertrand Russell? Right?
Bertrand Russell is humanist, atheist, student of human nature. I'm quite fond of the Stoics. I'll have Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins. These are just authors. I'll have 100-year-old leather-bound edition of Robinson Crusoe.
Oh, yeah? How about Stephen King?
Yeah.
How about Nora Roberts? She wrote some good romances.
I don't consider that to be romantic literature. I consider it more to be propaganda.
Propaganda. Okay.
I like to read. I don't
Yes.
get to read as much as I want to, but I do. I like to read historical stuff. It's probably more, if I had favorites, you'd have to list it by genre, not by any particular topic. I'm a big fan of Moby Dick.
Oh, yeah.
Melville's is a phenomenal piece of literature that everybody should read. I mean, it's
Especially for its time. Unbelievable, huh?
yeah, just the prose, even the
Have you read any Connie Golden? He wrote the Emperor series, and he wrote the Genghis Khan.
absolutely. Yeah, Conor Golden is a phenomenal author, and you can immerse yourself in that sort of sweeping stuff. You know, his series on Genghis Khan.
Yeah. Do you like it better than the Roman one, or have you read them both?
Yeah, I've read them both, and Genghis Khan is someone who's so phenomenally.
Alexander the Great of his era, kind of amazing story.
There's no comparison.
You don't think
if
so?
you want to talk about empires, yeah, Genghis had it all. Yeah, it started from nothing,
Oh, yeah.
and Alexander had everything. So
Yeah, I guess they just start differently.
I think it's interesting too, just from a military standpoint. Yeah, I've got phenomenal books on military tactics and wars and stuff throughout the ages. I'm a big fan of Japanese martial arts.
And you do some sword making, you and your son, right?
We dick around a little bit with that. My son doesn't. He thinks my job sucks. So
Oh, really?
I said, yeah. I took him to work with me when he was 16, just to cure him. Yeah. So, well, this is what happens when you don't study in school, bud. You should probably, study harder.
So what's he do now?
He's got a Bachelor of Science and a degree in biology, and that and $1.50 and a bag of chips will get you a job at the Costco in the tire shop.
So is he in the Costco?
He's a Costco member, and he used to. This is hilarious because McRae would rail against late stage capitalism. He was a true millennial, and on and on. And it's like, well, now he's working for the man, right? And guess what? Code was pretty decent to major corporations like Costco and Walmart and all that kind of stuff. And so he's a supervisor now. He's been eyeballed for management and that kind of stuff, and he still hates it working for the man. But guess what? He does his 9 to 5, and he gets his benefits and his pension on, and laughing all the way to the bank.
Is he still doing any forging with you?
No. But my daughter, McCall, had her coming out and hopping in the fire and doing some basic blacksmithing and that kind of stuff.
I don't think I've ever met her. How old is she?
McCall's 26, and
wow.
she's one of the smartest, most beautiful souls you're ever going to meet. She's an artist at her heart and soul. She draws, she paints, she writes, she sculpts. She's her and I took a little father-daughter pottery course here a little bit ago. And,
Cool.
yeah, she's a horse chick. She went off to UBC, got a degree in psychology and a minor in anthropological archaeology.
Wow. Nice.
She took psychology so she could understand her parents, but
I bet you and her have a lot in common.
No.
No? Sounds like you would.
No.
The psychology and the anthropology and the...
No, she's way smarter. She's just a decent human being where I'm not. My wife, Kathleen, is a horse chick. I swore I'd never marry a horse chick, but it was actually here at Spruce Meadows where I met Kathleen. She was 18 years old, grooming for Linda Southern.
And you were working here.
Yeah. Well, Lance didn't want to, she was a typical groom girl that got her own horse and needed it trimmed, and Lance didn't want to do it, so he gave her my number, and, the rest is history, so to speak.
I'll be dang. Well, you have quite a storied past with Spruce Meadows. You want to get into any of that?
I started my career here 40 years ago with Don Wenham. Day one on the job was, north of D-Barn, trimming mares and foals and that kind of stuff, and I worked for the family for a long time.
Now, have you ever roped or rodeoed or trail ride?
Yeah, I was a pony club kid. I was used to show jump in 3-day event. The very first time I met Linda Southern was at a little tiny horse show, Glenmore Athletic Park, just as this place was being built. So,
How about now? Do you still get on horses?
No, maybe once a year, every other year, we might go for a trail ride or something. My wife just her heart horse just passed, and first time since I've known Kathleen that she doesn't have a dog in her lap and a horse in the yard. So she swears she's not going to get another horse, but I'm not much of a lap dog, and I'm even a worse ride. So I don't know how it's going to work out.
What's our next topic, Marshall?
There's so many World Championship Blacksmiths stories from the Stampede. I've got hundreds of them, and probably most of them are either career ending or or marriage wrecking. So I don't know how deep you want to go in that dive, but it's kind of funny. I get young guys come up and say, "Oh, I was listening to this podcast and so was talking about this thing that happened at Stampede and blah blah blah," and I was like, "Yeah, I know. I was there.
Yeah.
I was involved. Yeah." So, well, what about the time of it was like, yeah, that was me talking to that guy. So,
Well, tell us some of those stories.
you'd have to narrow the field of discussion on that one. All the times that you competed, and you were there 19 times.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, there you would have had questions.
My big story about the Stampede was I top 10'd, and then I was in the top 5, and I was 5th place in top 5, and Don's announcing to start. They say, "All right, we're going to start in 10, 9. Oh, wait, hold on just a second. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they had done the math wrong by a half a point, and I was actually 6th place, and I had to come off of the floor. And that was devastating for a young competitor. That was a bad deal.
For a fact. I mean, it just knock the nuts out of you and drag you off and throw you on the gut pile. It was all wrong. And a little late for an apology now. Looking from the inside, I can't even begin to tell you how much frustration I had over the years, because when we started, it was pencil and paper. I'm still an analog kind of guy. I'm anti-tech. I'm not a Luddite. I understand the value of technology, but it's the frustrations that we had with scorekeeping, because Stampede was, converting over to technology and computers and this, that, and on. And I can still add and subtract a whole lot quicker with pen and pencil than it takes somebody to do the data entry and then they have to triple check and have a computer spit it out.
Yeah.
We spent tens of thousands of dollars developing computer programs that were specific for the contest.
No kidding.
Yeah, and it was ridiculous because it was all, to me, it was pointless, but they wanted a level of legitimacy, and they wanted to try to streamline all of the different ag programming. And, some computer salesman was making buku off of
software program
Stampede contract. And that's one of the things about Stampede. It's all, who you know. So it's some cousin or son or nephew or niece or whoever, that's on the inside that has a company that they're going to promote. So I was at odds and at war with the time that I spent as chairman with our computer people, our scorekeeping people, with the administrators, with the upper echelons.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's why I can't work downtown in an office building, because I'm more of a result-driven person.
You would have more trouble working for the man than your son would, huh?
Correct. Yeah, or woman.
I consider myself to be unemployable. I'd say you probably feel the same.
Which speaks to just about every single horseman I've ever met, because we exist inside a little bit of a self-made vacuum in that most horseshoers you talk to, they'll say, well, I want to work with horses because I don't want to work with people. And the sad part is, well, the horses are easy. It's the people you're going to have to get around.
Yeah, and there's no horses writing checks.
Yeah. And what's the maximum about you need 3 things in order to be a decent horseman? You need to have good horse skills, you need to have good hand skills, and you need to have good people skills.
Yep.
Well, you and I both know lots of guys that have 0 horse skills. We all know lots of guys that couldn't find their backside with both hands in a road map. They have 0 hand skills, but guess what? They can talk.
In reality, in this trade, if you're a really good businessman and run it like a business with the people skills, you can make more money than a guy who is a really, really good tradesman.
100%.
And doesn't have the people skills.
If I had one, not a despair about what we've done over the years or my career path, it would be that, and I tell anybody that comes around with me, and I've had probably 50 different people work with me over the years, is that you need not only to treat this as a business, but you need to be able to learn how to run it as a business. And we spent more time teaching our young acolytes how to operate and run a decent business. And it's not about the pursuit of commerce. I fully believe there has to be some sort of marriage and balance between art and commerce. Because what we do for the most part, building shoes or making these animals better or helping them is an art part of it.
Oh, it's very artistic. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no one way or means but if you start off with a base in business and being able to treat it as such, you'd go a whole lot farther. It'd probably be, less suicides. or murder suicides. You get that phone call, and it's going to be ugly, because it's the dealing with the human element is the tough part.
Yes. Yeah, I'd have to agree. How much longer are you going to be shoeing?
I'm debt motivated. I don't. Retirement isn't a word that is in my vocabulary. I feel like I'm more like an old school horse. To got to keep moving just to stay moving.
So I talked to you yesterday, and you still had 10 head to go do, and I'm thinking, my goodness, man.
I didn't get them all done last night. I shot till about 8:00, and it was a bit of a storm that was brewing up. This was halfway to Banff, where the place I was at, and it was one of those. It's one of my best accounts, and so I had to go look after it. I've been working horse shows for the last 3 weeks, so I was kind of behind. It was definitely weather. It was getting cold, and so you could see some snow starting to brew up over the mountains. And the thing is that Spruce Meadows is coming, so we have this thing in Calgary where you want the weather to be inclement. Just put on a horse show.
Oh, okay.
Spruce Meadows during the Masters has had like a phenomenal, egregious run of bad, inclement weather.
Oh, no.
Like historically over the last 45, 47 years, whatever. I mean, it's like a 60 to 75% ratio of inclement weather.
I'll be dang.
There's famous stories of, people riding the international ring in the middle of a hurricane.
Wow.
We're going to be blessed by having good weather for the rest of the week for this contest here. And that's my fervent hope, because
I got to say, this has gone way cleaner than I had imagined. You've been on your best behavior, and I appreciate it.
Well, I am actually here at Spruce Meadows, so I'm attempting to be a better version of myself. I was not always, thinking clearly. Every day is another chance to be a better human being. So
one thing I always ask on these podcasts is if you can teach me something with words, and it doesn't matter what it is. So I had one guy teach me how to mow his yard. I had another guy teach me how to light a barbecue. So can you think of something that you could teach me that we call it Kelly's contribution here? So
I got to teach you how to gargle tequila.
Okay.
I don't know if you know how to do that.
I don't. No, let's hear.
It's more about wanting it as opposed to needing it.
Okay.
If you start off with, say, Buckley's, if you start off easy and you start gargling Buckley's cough medicine,
okay,
yeah, it's not long before you're able to gargle tequila, and it's not a grievous, done properly. It doesn't have to be an altogether terrible experience, I believe.
And the worm, what do you do with the worm?
It's all protein. The worm's just a protein delivery device. So, I mean, it depends how hungry you are.
All right. So you can gargle and eat the worm, huh?
Yeah. I don't know why you wouldn't. Tequila is a probiotic. It's probably the healthiest of all the hard liquors. I don't even like it, but my doctor says, in order to keep a pH balance in my gut biome, I think, vitamin T is probably a healthier choice.
What's the daily dosage?
Depends how your day's going.
Yeah. Mark Twain said that he used to drink a fifth of whiskey every night for toothaches. And his entire life, he never had a toothache that he could remember.
I think Mark Twain was a phenomenally exceptional, not just a poet and a philosopher, but he's a cool dude that you want to sit down and have a beer and a tequila with.
He would have been a good guy to know, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you wish we had talked about that we haven't brought up?
Oh, there's a broad range of topics that we could have a phenomenal conversation about. And I swore to my wife that I was not going to talk about Donald Trump today. I swore that I was not going to engage in any religious conversations of grievous nature. And I'm trying to stay married is what I'm trying to do.
How long have you been married?
32 glorious years.
All right. How old are you, Marshall?
Oh, well, I'm going to say that I'm in pretty good shape for 70, but I'm pretty rough shape for 50. So I'm going to turn 62.
62.
I'm going to turn 62 on Sunday.
Oh, wow. So they're celebrating with World Championship Blacksmiths crowning on your birthday, huh?
The biggest birthday present ever is going to be watching Linda Southern hand somebody a check for $75,000 for shoeing a horse.
Wow.
I'm going to take this opportunity to thank Linda personally and the entire Spruce Meadows family and her son Charlie for getting me into this little party.
They have been exceptional.
Beyond exceptional. I think this is the place it needed to be. I 100% believe this in my heart and soul. I've said that forever.
Well, and this is not just ag, it's horse. And Calgary was ag, but it kept moving away from it. It was horse, but it was also pigs, and it was gardening, and this is horse. This is horse.
This is one of the premier equestrian facilities in the entire planet. Yep. Spruce Meadows family has done the entire world a favor by pushing and promoting, and it's not always been easy for them to.
I can't even imagine.
And I have nothing but praise and admiration for what they've done for the equestrian community. And the trickle down has been, Calgary has always been a bit of a magnet in that regard. It's an anomaly between the Stampede and the Spruce Meadows. And we've had access to some of the very best, not just in horse flesh, but the opportunity to see so many top people in our professions.
Right.
Has been able to elevate and raise the level. I mean, when I think about over the years, Stampede, whatever you think of it, and I have lots of thoughts about Stampede, but they were a vehicle, absolute vehicle, whether it was a party place, for Grant and Billy to be doing shopping cart races with waitresses, back in the day when they first showed up, or whether it was crowning a world champion in front of 20,000 people, on the grandstand stage, and having those people feel that you've been on that stage, that bounce back. That was our Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is next level. This isn't just a continuation. And it's not a reinvention. This is a new start. Mm-hmm. This is a new start. This is how it should be.
Well, if you look at the workout there today, did you walk around looking at them horses?
Yeah.
I'm so happy I'm not judging that. My goodness, there's some good work out there.
There was a long spell after Stampede shut down our program. And you asked me one topic I don't want to talk about, and the one topic I want to talk about is probably the mental health part of the equation, because every single person on the planet struggles with who they are. It's that existential crisis, who am I, who do I want to be when I grow up, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
You can spend all the time at the couch you want about mommy and daddy issues and all that kind of stuff. But we all need to look in the mirror. And the sad part is not everybody has a mirror. I know for a fact that after having spent, a better part of my life pushing that rock up the hill for the industry, not getting paid for it, but I also received an education I couldn't have paid for, left a big vacuum, a big hole. And that wasn't my entire identity, but it sure was a pretty big part of my life. And I know how much my family had suffered for it, because it was the families that look after us as horseshoers, that we might be the heroes on the stage, but it's the families that are standing behind us, and the wives, and
you can't do it without some support.
Cannot. There's not a single one of us. Craig Kernker wouldn't be here without Christine. You wouldn't be here without Kelly. I wouldn't be here without Kathleen.
Yep. I
want to give honor to that. And I also want to say that when you're practicing as hard as you are for anything, whether it's this jumping contest or this horseshoeing contest, you're sacrificing. There's sacrifices that have to be made, whether it's your family, your business, your friends, yourself. The people that ascend that mountain and stand on top of the summit, the human cost that's gone along the way is phenomenal. And I know that I hit a wall with it. I think everybody gets to a place in their life where they get dark. I know that Don Wenham, the person who started this whole adventure, suffered greatly most of his life with mental health issues, struggled greatly. I was fortunate enough to be able to see Don. It was probably 3 or 4 months before he passed, and we were having the 40th anniversary of what the Olds Classic was, which was the contest that was the progenitor of the World Championships. It was the thing that started it all off. Don had been on another search for self. He was living in a van. He was, driving tractor fields for farmers. He was having a hard time of it, and his health was not good.
Was he an old man then?
He was 70 plus. Don didn't really realize what an effect that he had on the world. And I met him for lunch. I ran into him at the local horseshoe store, and he wanted to have words. And I was trying to bring him back into the fold. I wanted him to be a speaker at the contest. I wanted to honor him. We'd honored him before, but he always had issues there. We honored him at the 20th. We honored him at the 25th. He showed me a belt buckle that he had made, about being the founder of the World Championships. It was a beautiful buckle. That was one of the iconic Calgary things. You got your check, you got the trophy, and you got this gold and silver buckle. And so Don had built himself his own buckle.
Oh, wow.
And he showed it to me, and he was like, you can get a buckle made of anything. It would be, king of the world, right?
Right.
But it showed me just how important it was to him to be recognized. And I said, Don, if you need any validation for any of this, I said, you have to know what a phenomenal effect that you've had globally. And, I've been fortunate enough to be able to see it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you've had a global influence because the original champions get surpassed. There's a reason why 5-time world champion Bob Marshall was replaced by, well, you look at the progression from Grant to Billy to Darren to Stephen. The bar just keeps getting raised, and we're going to get to see the bar raised again
This week, yeah.
Yeah, and those people get to go home, and they're the top dogs in their area, and then everybody's chasing them. You look at with the technology today and what everybody has done with the online distance learning, with all of the YouTube tutorials and all of the
you can watch some incredible stuff in it.
Yeah, and to me that speaks volumes to what an effect one person has had. The sad part is that Don passed. He died in his van alone in the middle of the night with no one to
that's tough.
Give him that validation.
That's tough. Was he a married man and kids and all that?
He'd been divorced. His wife Robin, who was sort of the backbone of the contest when it first started, she passed of brain tumor. He was estranged from his family. It was beyond sad. That hit me hard. Not having the stampede carry on and feeling like I think the quote was, "We see no value here."
Oh man,
I denied it for a long time that it bothered me. When I finally hit the wall, having my own personal existential crisis. I mean, I'm lucky to still be married.
We all are.
Yeah, we all are. Credit to all the strong women that look after us and put up with our bullshit, allow us to chase our dreams.
Yep.
They're the ones that we should be looking after and doing it for, not us. Not the vanity. It's not a check. It's not a trophy. It's not climbing the mountain because you still have to go home. Yeah, you're just the same asshole with a fancy check and a trophy now, right?
I don't know. I guess I never won the trophy, so I don't know the answer, Marshall.
I've never won anything. We had fun one day at the Worlds with Bob Marshall and Mark Milser and Ian Ritchie, and we kind of snuck in a win on a 4-man team drafting. That was a pretty good day.
You didn't have my gray.
You did not. We had the Big Hank, the Belgian, that had been won on a half dozen times, but also been lost on a half dozen times.
Yeah.
Well, I'll never forget the Mexican team drawing that horse, and they'd never seen a horse that big in their life. And Hank was one of those ones, like a 2,400-pound Belgian. It was just the laziest POS in the world, but it had gorgeous feet. If you could actually stand in under him and get the thing done, you probably could win. But he wanted to lay on you, just dog you the whole time. And
my first year here, me and Dallas Morgan came together, and I didn't get on a draft team because we didn't have a team together, and I was the odd man out. So you told me and Dallas, well, one of you guys can go with. I can't remember who you was with, but anyway, he took it and I didn't. But I watched the Austrian team, and that was the first time I'd watched one guy hold while the other guy trimmed.
Hans Wallner's on the back end. He's tied.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. He had dallied a rope around his body, wrapped it around the fetlock of a draft horse, and he stood there. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going to watch somebody die today.
We're going to see a snuff film happen right in front of us.
So you remember that?
I was standing right there watching, going, oh, that don't look good. That's good. None of this is going to end well.
Yeah, holding the foot for somebody is one thing, but tying yourself to it while you hold it, oh man. That was educational. That was my first time really to go see stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so many of my good memories are Calgary.
Oh, well, that guy, Hans Wallner, he had phenomenal talent. He had built that. We had Metal Art Showcase, and he had built that dragon. And it was on the cover of our prize list. All it did was show just how much talent is out there in the wide world, and there's that Metal Art Showcase thing was a cool deal, and you can still see it replicated today. You look at what Mike Randalls has built for a trophy for this contest.
Yeah, it was
unbelievable.
Yeah.
You look at Tom Willoughby, what Tom and Royden have done. There's so many talented people in this industry.
Yep.
There's so much unseen and unheard of talent, and they're all unique individuals, and they all have stories. And if I was going to say anything to anybody listening, is that to be true to yourselves, be the best version of yourself you can be, never stop learning. Education is where you find it. You know, you can learn something every single day, even if it's from the dumbest person. You learn how not to do something.
Sure.
Yeah, every day is another chance to do it a little bit better. You know, and that's how you leave the world a little bit better place. And if you want a legacy, it doesn't have to be a buckle. It doesn't have to be a trophy. You know, it's the influence and the difference that you make in the world around you. And I think it's one of the truest way forwards.
Well, I tell you what, that's a wonderful note to end on. Marshall, this has been a joyful hour for me.
I got all the time for you. Anytime, Chris.
Well done, sir. I think this is going to be a great one. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
My son Cody has always had a mind that works in an engineering mechanical way that allows him to solve problems that some people, like me, don't even know exist. His fuller is a perfect example. I've been making shoes since 1990 and have used just about every type of creaser there is out there. Some drive well, some don't, but to me they were all pieces of metal on a handle with an end to hit and a sharp end to make the crease. Cody started playing around with the geometry and heat treating of his fullers, and it was amazing how I can crease with one of his tools with a lot less effort. It takes 3 passes with another brand, Cody's will make it in 2. Well, I don't know how he did it, but I do know that his tools work with precision and accuracy that many others don't, allowing me to do a better job because they have a quality that I can count on. From his punches to his tongs, you'll not find a better tool to make your life as a farrier easier. Check out his line of tools at CodyGregoryLLC.com.